Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for making it on this week's webinar. My name is John Grumley. I am Marketing Coordinator for Coeus Consulting based in Phoenix, Arizona. I am joined today by one of our exquisite business partners from Kaseya, Brian Doty, Channel Development. Thank you very much, Brian, for making on today's broadcast.
Oh, thanks for having me, John. I really appreciate being here.
No, thank you, sir, for making it. And everyone, today, as you know, the webinar today we'll be discussing is cybersecurity insurance. And kind of the goal of that today is, first of all, discussing the importance of cybersecurity insurance and changes in 2026 specifically for the healthcare industry. So today, the presentation really was driven towards healthcare. A lot of changes coming in healthcare that we'll be covering today, but really kind of the gist of the relationship between us and Kaseya, as we're going to kind of dive into, is they're our technology partner. They give us a lot of technology we make available to our customers in the healthcare space that really help us do a lot of different things, particularly around cybersecurity and compliance advisory services as well, which we will be diving into very shortly as well. If you have any questions, we do have a QA button available, so please feel free to pop or raise your hand during the presentation as well, and we'll be happy to dive into as well. So with no further ado, we'll dive into the presentation. And again, I want to thank Brian again for making the time today. So let me go ahead and bring up the slide deck, and we will go ahead and get started. So as you can tell, the first thing that I wanted to really is understanding what the title really means: Healthcare Cyber Insurance Reckoning in 2026. So cyber insurance has been around for a lot of years. A lot of people that have been on the call or we've been on, sales calls with have said, yes, I've had cyber insurance for several years. It's helped us when we've had ransomware attacks. It's helped us cover costs. It's helped us sort of kind of reduce our risk and liability a little bit. However, as most things in life, things do change. And that's really kind of why we wanted to have today's presentation. But before we get started, please enjoy the pizza. Check your email for the gift card sent by me this morning. $25 gift card for everyone that's participating in today's webinar. Again, enjoy the pizza from Domino's Pizza. And of course, want to thank Kaseya, our wonderful sponsor today, for the MDF funding. Thank you there, Brian, for the money so we can be able to provide some food and festive during the event today as well. So, sir, thank you again for making the time for doing it as well. Very appreciative.
Absolutely.
Okay. Coeus Consulting, a little bit about us. Coeus Consulting is based, we are an MSP based in the Phoenix area. We're AAA rated with the Better Business Bureau. We deliver managed IT services. We put a lot of emphasis on supporting the SMB market in the Valley, along with obviously healthcare, construction, automotive, legal, and semiconductor. We are a local team. We are locally staffed. When people call, we pick up the phone. It is a local team here in the Phoenix area that is supporting our customers and a lot of the vertical markets as well. And Brian, I'll go ahead and turn over. If you'd like to tell the world what Kaseya does, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely, John. And Kaseya, we support MSPs. I mean, everybody can read this, but we are the tools that MSPs use to deliver their services and solutions to their clients, helping them be more secure, helping them back up their information, train their users, all sorts of things in the cybersecurity space. And I'll get into that a little bit more later, but provided we do all the things, we provide all the tools on the back end for most MSPs.
And we thank you for that because a good portion of our practice is based on your tool set. So thank you for being, as I mentioned, an incredible partner as well. Let's go through the agenda real quick. We're going to get into cybersecurity landscape. Again, this is a subject a lot of people are familiar with, but again, like everything else in life, lots of changes coming. We're going to also define, more importantly, the problem statement in 2026 and how it has changed. It's not just simply dealing with ransomware. It's now dealing with the cost of how to maintain your cyber insurance policy, things that not only the carriers are looking for, but most important of all, the cost and time it takes to sustain that. And that, again, is one of the reasons that we, have these presentations. And most importantly, nothing also is the insurers and regulators prior to 2026, for the most part, say, do you have a policy for multi-factor authentication? Do you have encryption? Do you have a policy on email security supposed to be deployed? Do you have a policy on how you allow contractors into your network? And most people would say, yes, we do. Here it is. We wrote it, and then we put it in the drawer. Now the insurers and regulators are coming back going, okay, show me. Prove it. Let me see this. That has changed the dynamics dramatically, especially in 2026. Where's the role of managed IT in healthcare? That's where we come in. Again, we get engaged a lot with healthcare providers that are stuck with the reality of, I wrote a policy, now I need to prove it. I don't have the talent. I don't have the resources. And most of all, our business is healthcare, not IT. And this is where we look for people like Coeus Consulting to come in and provide managed services. The other portion, which is really fascinating, we'll cover on topic number 5, is understanding the readiness assessment and the ability to prove the readiness assessment. It's just not saying we had somebody come in and do an assessment and we've got some remediation. It's now, okay, show us that remediation, show us the gaps, because as your insurance and carrier provider, we want to understand our risk in providing a policy to you as well. So these are kind of things that we'll be covering today. So I mentioned we're going to dive into landscape. So let's dive into the problem statement. Number one on the problem statement, as you can see, is compliance trap. Health organizations are buying cyber insurance for peace of mind and discovering at claim time that their IT practice disqualifies them before the breach even happened, which meant they had a whole bunch of stuff that they promised the carriers they would do, and they didn't do it. And now that they didn't do it, even before a malware or something, comes in on attack, they have already disqualified themselves to be able to receive financial claim, relief as well. Second one, understanding the cost of healthcare breaches, up to $10 million per incident. I mean, just take a moment and just wrap your head around that for a moment. You have a $10 million loss of your business as a result of one single cyber attack within a given year. That, in most cases, would wipe out not only whatever cyber insurance you have, but also capital that you have on your balance sheets that was slated for new beds, new clinics, additional resources, additional equipment, upgrade your equipments, and now something that money has to go to recovering from a cyber attack as well. Third one, rule changes. Absolutely. Does HIPAA have rule changes every year? Insurers also change as well. So insurers are going, well, HIPAA's telling you to do this. Did you actually do what HIPAA told you to do? If not, I need to know. And then ultimately at the bottom of the blunt one, cyber insurance policies has a clause for IT vendors hasn't met in 2026. It is not a technicality. It is a deny claim ability. So insurers can come in and say, okay, how did that ransomware get in? Well, it came in through email security. Who are you using for email security? Is it powered by AI? Who's monitoring it 24 hours a day? Who's actually preventing data loss prevention? Who's actually ensuring encryption is on everywhere and everywhere? We think doesn't work. What works is it technically is being monitored and managed. It is being done 24 hours. Here's our proof. Then you have a better opportunity to having your claim, honored as well. 40% of claims have been denied due to missing controls, meaning you were supposed to have a security control, private VLANing, encryption, multi-factor authentication, email security, data loss prevention. All of those things are missing controls. 40% means that those claims will be denied. Why? Because ultimately the insurance carrier said, look, you had a ransomware attack. It could have been prevented or at least minimized, and you chose not to. Now we have to pay out all this money to you, and good luck trying to get a policy from us the next year. So this is why, again, we're focusing on healthcare. Why? Because ransomware, healthcare is the number one target for ransomware, right? I mean, there's others. Manufacturing, of course, has their pain. Legal gets their pain. Communication systems get their pain. Utilities and so on. We get it. But healthcare still is number one. Why? Because they suspect that most healthcare providers, especially SMBs, do not make the core investment necessary to protect the most critical assets. Now, cyber insurance renewals are not just simply a technical audit. There's a verification. Give me your questionnaire. I'm going to verify. I'm just not taking your word for it anymore. That's the insurance carriers coming into healthcare saying, I don't trust you anymore. We cannot afford another bad year. We need to make sure that you have all these controls. You're verifying 24/7 these controls are in place. And we're going to come in and check before you issue a new policy as well. For Phoenix Healthcare Practitioner, the question is no longer whether to invest in cyber or whether to invest your current partner will improve your controls. It is about making sure that your partner in IT providing services is capable of sustaining a 24/7 strategy for you to make sure that you can make sure that your cyber insurance will be honored at the end of the day as well. Why is healthcare under attack? As I mentioned, 77% organizations targeted by ransomware, 58 successful compromise attacks, 53% compromise attacks. If I'm a hacker, there's the money. The cost of every single medical record I can jack out at Epic or Cerner and Allscripts, $250 per record up on Darknet, right? They know that most healthcare providers are constantly under the cost strains. They're constantly under the reality of, do we have enough operating capital to do elective surgeries, to do mandatory surgeries, to have a trauma unit, to have an emergency unit? And ultimately, it comes down to they have a limited IT staff to do everything in the hospital, everything, including remote clinics and mobile devices and mobile equipment and things like that as well. Attackers know that. So it to them is easy pickings, right? Which again is one of the reasons that managed services play such a critical role. Why does all this matter to healthcare providers? Under attack, under resources, and under pressure. Okay. So while they're trying to maintain a profitable practice by delivering healthcare services to communities, to outreaches, to remote clinic environments, to tribals like we do have here, in Phoenix, New Mexico, and Colorado, and California, the ability to bring services closer to the people requires capital. At the same time, as further out as they move away from the clinics and the hospital campuses, the more likely they're going to face a remote cyber attack. So having the ability to cover that and ensure that there's protection in place to make sure that things don't become compromisable allows them to continue to develop the medical care that they seek to want to do. At the same time, they can also address the issues from the insurers and the regulators. Okay, let's hit the reality on HIPAA. Everyone knows HIPAA is, it spells three different ways depending on what part of the country you live in. But reality, though, is that HIPAA puts out regulations, particularly for cybersecurity, and says this is what you need to do to ensure that you're protecting electronic medical records. Okay, but that does not mean just because you say I'm HIPAA compliant, I can get a cybersecurity insurance policy. Doesn't work like that. Insurance carriers are going to come in and say, we want more than what HIPAA told you to do. We need you to implement a lot more. And this was so very important years ago when the whole idea of multi-factor authentication or encryption, or the whole idea of email security, or mandatory database encryption, things like that, were like, well, until HIPAA tells us to do it, we're just not going to do it. Okay. Your insurer comes in and says, tough tiddlywinks, we want to make sure you have all of these controls enabled. And if a hospital says, whoa, 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 we're HIPAA, it doesn't matter anymore, because ultimately the insurer is the one that says, I want you to have these things in place, right? New reality. Coverage depends on how verified controls work, not whether or not you're HIPAA compliant, as I mentioned before. MSPs like ourselves are becoming critical in implementing and managing insured required protections for healthcare organizations. Healthcare providers look to companies like Coeus Consulting to say, we need to be insured. We need to ensure these controls are working. We need to make sure that if we do have an outbreak, that it can be contained quickly and without having to cause further collateral damage within our environment, right? We need to make sure that all core requirements work. Now, I know it sounds facetious, but I've been in IT almost 30 years, and I will tell you that just because something worked on day one does not mean it works on day 186. When we implemented certain security controls or protection layers like email security, but we were monitoring, or we weren't reading syslogs, or we weren't looking at S&P trap information back in the day, right? We now have put our place in a vulnerability state, right? Most important tagline, which I really appreciate from these slides, again, thanks to the Kaseya team for some of the content. Compliance and cybersecurity are now one and the same, right? Compliance, great. We check, we have a policy. Cybersecurity, we verify that the policies have checks, controls do work, working together. That means when you're budgeting for compliance and you're budgeting for cyber, it probably should be the same budget or the same project, rotation as well. So let's talk about what's changing. Some of the bigger things that came out in 2026. Again, this is from the Rubin Brown law firm that put out this incredible information. Cyber insurance and regulators are now aligned on one standard: proof over promises. Don't tell me you think you have this enabled somewhere. I want to see it. The same controls for compliance, MFA encryption response, underwriters demanding more and after a claim. Organizations that cannot demonstrate continuous maintain operational risk control, risk both cover denial and regulatory exposure, right? Here's another thing that's also come out, which again sounds like car insurance from back in the day, risk-based pricing. You're in California, you choose to drive a Ferrari. I love it. You can hit the I-5 from LA to San Diego in 28 minutes. Thumbs up. However, you're probably paying $2,000 a month for insurance, right? Well, the rest of us that drive hybrid cars that drive 40 miles an hour probably only pay about $67 per month through Progressive. A little hit there. Operations, reliable controls, better terms. So the more you put into making sure your controls work and your technology works and verifying it works, more likely you're going to have lower premiums in your environment as well. So how are the regulators raising the stakes in this? Again, they're coming back to risk analysis. Okay. I don't think you have the right controls. I don't think you have the right resources. You're not proving me 24/7 coverage, right? They look back on previous settlements. They look on previous claims, how much insurance had to be paid out from previous events. They also look back on incomplete assessments. This is where the whole idea of an assessment and the ability to have qualified assessors come in to make sure that not only is the assessment being done properly based on current standards, but ensuring that there's no missing information, ensuring that these things don't get out of date. They're doing them either on a monthly, quarterly, or on an annual basis to make sure that when the environment is being assessed, the third parties that are doing assessment have no stake in the ground other than just validating and completing assessments based on different standards as well. Regulators want to see that, right? Now, here's the one that really brought everybody down. The Office of Civil Rights Increasing Scrutiny and Penalties, the OCR issued a notice of proposed rulemaking in 2024, strengthening cybersecurity protection, electronic protected healthcare EPI. The final rule expected to be published in May of 26, with a compliance on approximately 24 days of publication. Bottom line says historically, HIPAA security will allow coverage engine business associated to treat certain safeguards as addressable. Many organizations could document why control wasn't reasonably appropriate, but none of the changes, that flexibility is gone. In plain terms, you can no longer write a policy memo explaining why and did not implement the corresponding security control. You simply have to implement it. This is, again, really is the game changer. Prior to this, we have a policy, we have a process, it's there, we have it reviewed every quarter, but we don't have the capital funding to put that control in place. Doesn't work anymore. Now, although that stuff has to be done as well. So what I'm going to do is turn it over to my butt here. Brian's going to talk about a little bit of Kaseyaism. Brian, you want to take over, please? And I'll go ahead and advance the slides. Just tell me when to move forward.
Awesome. Thank you, John. And yeah, this is all very relevant. We're having these conversations with our partners all the time. So this isn't anything new for me, that's for sure. And at Kaseya, one of the things that we're doing is helping our partners enable and have the resources to do this on a lower budget or a better budget, or at least be able to get everything within their budget, right? So you can go ahead to the next slide, John.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that we're hearing from the insurance carriers out there is, if I go back to 2025, it was a record year for claims. If I go to 2024, it was also a record year for claims. If I go to 23, so as you can see, the pattern is every year seems to be a record year for claims. Huh. So look, if I rewound maybe 10 years, if you could fog a mirror and you were some kind of business, some kind of professional organization,
Mhm.
you could get an insurance policy. The carriers didn't know very much at that time. They didn't really understand what kind of risks their policies were being exposed to. And it didn't take long for them to have a record year of claims.
Mhm.
And so then they started asking questions, and you used to get those questionnaires that came with the policy. Okay, are you backing up your data? Are you using multi-factor authentication? Are you training users? Things like that. And you would just make an attestation, check the box. It was pretty vague, and on your way with your policy. Now, if you didn't check the box,
Mhm.
well, okay, maybe you were going to get an additional premium. Maybe you weren't qualified for some carriers' policies. But now the language has tightened down. Insurers are masters of CYA.
There they are.
And and look, it's because they're starting to really understand the risks here. And the reason they're writing these tighter policies, they're asking these questions, they're not only making you attest to doing these things, but as John said, they're making you demonstrate that you're doing these things, that you have these controls in place. And so what we're seeing is the carriers realize that these sorts of controls mitigate risk. And obviously that helps them. So there's a shared responsibility in this that
Mhm.
I think is definitely a good thing. But yes, what we see is year after year is a record year for claims. So we can go on to the next slide, John.
Mhm.
I could go on and on about that. And, a lot of times, as people are going to renew their policies, this is something we've seen in the last several years. As people were going to renew their policies, they have to have an assessment for insurance purposes. And what we find is the vast majority of organizations are failing these assessments. Now, maybe things were in place when they first signed their policy. A year has gone by, a few
Mhm.
years has gone by. Things change in the environment, in the network. Maybe somebody brought something new in, some new pieces of equipment.
Mhm.
And it exposes the organization to new risk. And so this is one of the reasons we see. Another reason that we've seen some changes here and a lot of policies, actually, a lot of the assessments fail is because some organizations they don't see value in some of the tools that they're using and some of the solutions they're using because it doesn't spit out a report saying we produced so much revenue for your company or
Right.
something like that.
Or
It
save money, or we save
save
money, right?
money.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
right. Unless
Yeah.
it's producing something or saving something from the organization,
Yeah.
it's hard to show that value.
Yeah.
And so I've also seen a lot of organizations move away from a once very secure state into one that is much less secure, costing them at the time of their next assessment. And so this can mean much higher premiums. We've seen more than double in some cases where policies come back. And so that leaves organizations in a very peculiar spot, I would say,
Mhm.
where they don't have that safety net in place. So they either forego insurance for a time while they're getting these controls in place, or they say, you know what, we don't really need it. And they take that risk,
Mhm.
which is certainly a problem as well. So we can go on to the next slide, John.
Yeah, I just want to harp on one thing that
Yep.
Brian was saying that's really important. Notice this statement says premium increases to 100 to 300%. Now
Yeah.
imagine if you're an SMB healthcare provider, now you're suddenly having to pay 300% above your previous premium because your assessments did not work. Right?
Yeah.
Just channel that for a moment. That's 300% increase in your cost because you did not invest it or do what was right, the assessment, told you to do, right? So now you go back to your carrier saying, okay, I'm up for, whatever. And they say, I'm sorry, you failed this and failed this. If you want a premium, you're going to pay 300% more. Where does that money come from? Right? You can't, I mean, it goes back to now you get dipping into your capital to cover insurance that could have been preventable. Now you have to pay for additional coverage. Imagine if you're going through a merger and acquisition, some other bigger hospital chains looking at you and saying, okay, let's do it. Look, show me your last cyber insurance assessment. Wow. Why did your premiums jump 300%? Are you a risk? Have you now suddenly became a risk to the bigger company, right? So that's something to keep in mind that there's no free lunch anymore. Just by saying I got it doesn't mean anything. The fact that your
Right.
assessment failed, we'll move on. The downstream to this is far larger than what people are really taking for granted.
That's absolutely true. And that's the thing, the insurers are verifying this information now. It's not just, hey, I said I'm doing it, take my word for it. Um, they are charging for missing controls. If you're missing
Yes.
something, that's even if they'll insure you. We're seeing a lot of cases now where they just won't even give a policy. They'll say, hey, move on to another carrier. They'll take the risk.
Right.
But what we're seeing is they want to make sure that you have an incident response plan in place, that you're patching your systems, not just some of them, all of them. The carriers love to use that language, all systems. That you're training your staff. We kind of make light of this from time to time. I don't know if you do too, John, but like we make jokes about how bad staff can be at times. I sat next to a woman on an airplane. This was about a year and a half ago,
Mhm.
and she opened her laptop. She pulled out her password manager on her cell phone, which, wow, it looks like my hand's empty.
Oh my
Um,
God.
and I mean, right in the seat next to me, her password in full plain text view, and using a super sophisticated iPhone 10, I was able to capture her username and password. Well, it was for,
Allegedly,
yeah,
allegedly,
it
allegedly.
was
Okay.
for
All
her,
right.
it was for her private equity account. And she had $1.7 million worth of vested equity in this particular company. We had an interesting conversation for like the second half of the plane ride. But the thing about it is folks aren't thinking about cybersecurity. They're just trying to get their job done. It's not necessarily done with malice, but it's an awareness that needs to continually be brought up. And insurers want to know that you're doing this and you're able to actually demonstrate that you're giving these kind of training. And the other thing is the SOC 2 verifications from all the vendors
There's
and software solutions you're dealing with out there. That is extremely important for what you're doing. The other thing that we're seeing, and these have been around for a while, but now these are non-negotiables. Multi-factor authentication. Again, all systems is a term that's used as a CYA for the insurers. It's just that simple,
Mhm.
and it's literally on everything. If they find a system does not have it, that's an out for them to cover to not pay out on a claim.
Especially if the breach comes from that source, comes from a remote machine or remote branch, or it comes in through email.
That's
Absolutely.
correct.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
That's correct. Endpoint detection and response, managed detection and response, meaning that there is a security operations center monitoring these tools, monitoring these systems on a 24 by 7 basis.
Mhm.
It's kind of challenging to hire the resources necessary in-house to do something like that. This is why we leverage the MSP community to deliver these solutions, because not only do they have some of the tools and things that we use, but they're able to provide that manpower, so to speak, that goes into managing and observing these tools and being able to stop something in its tracks.
Right. So
The
I
other
got to
thing, yeah,
one
go ahead,
one
John.
point, Brian.
Sorry about
One point I want to interject, Brian, here because I think it's important that we get into the next piece, which is I think the most vital of the vital is understanding backups.
Yes.
And the reason I just love to really come strong on this, particularly in healthcare, is you go into a healthcare account, which I've had several over my career. And when I talked to them about backing up systems, the first line they always throw at me was, "Oh, the vendor manages that for us." So the provider,
Yeah.
like a Cerner or a Scripps, Mall Scripps, whatever, Cardinal Health back in the day, right? Well, yes, but you still need to have access to that backup. You still need to patch that system. You still need to make sure that if they're managing for you, how are you validating that they're doing all those things? Because when you have to restore something, your SLA isn't 0 to 72 hours in healthcare. It's like, I want it back now. I want to see the snapshot, right? And this is an area that, I mean, EDR, absolutely. Antivirus, patch, endpoint security, XDR, all that stuff about protecting endpoint, I'm all there. But it's the backup part that continuously keeps, I know we got a slide coming up on this, but that's the one that really gets me because it's been around for 30 years in IT, backing up, backing up, backing up, restoring. It used to be on tape, now it's to the cloud. The ability to come back in a scheduled ability recovery time to meet the SLAs is one of the areas that when most insurers go in and go, okay, you got the backup, show me the restore, you know,
Right.
and they're
That's
like,
what matters.
they're like, what?
Yeah, that's
But
what
I
matters.
know your piece coming late, but I wanted to make sure that we
Right,
go
right.
strong on that because backing
Yeah,
up and restoring is one of the things that just still to this day skips a lot of people's minds.
absolutely. And there's a term here that, we are used to hearing, immutable, meaning that those backups are stored off-site in a
Yes.
place that you can't get to and delete it.
Right.
So there's a multi-step process to actually going in and deleting even old backups, for the interest in saving space or whatever. But
Hmm.
but that term immutability is very important to these insurance carriers, and that you're testing it. And to John's point, testing the recoverability. Now let's
Right.
go to the next slide, and then I think we're going to cover backup in another one. But here's the thing. If you don't do this right, you could be on the hook for this average $10.22 million. Worse, I don't know about you folks, but if you've ever put in a big insurance claim before, what do you think happens after? And the things that we see when you don't do this right, obviously, ransomware is a major challenge. A lot of people try to pay out the ransom and don't typically get all of their data back.
Mhm.
That comes with extreme amounts of downtime
Yes.
because you need to rebuild these systems. You have to leave the infected systems in place for forensic purposes.
Mhm.
So rebuilding all new systems and putting everything in place and keeping your fingers crossed that your backups haven't been infected, it's just brutal.
However, It's always been the thing, right? In order to come back from ransomware, backup and recovery used to be the trick. Still is to
Yep.
some degree. It's still the ultimate remedy that if you can restore from a previous window prior to a ransomware, you're in business. The problem is, to your point, if somebody attacks your backup before they, go after your main ransomware, that defeats that control. But just the ability to have a secure backup and restore strategy to recover quickly from ransomware helps reduce that 10 million dramatically.
Oh, absolutely, because the cost of downtime is certainly factored in there. And what you see, obviously, is you could have potentially regulatory fines against you. HIPAA can come in and fine, not to mention other regulatory bodies involved. If it's credit card related, it could be PCI.
Mhm.
Um, uh, the insurance risks, I already mentioned that. But also, if you think about what it costs the organization to not be operational,
Mhm.
so you can't take payments. You can't make payroll, things
Wow.
like that. And we've seen this within the healthcare industry and even outside of it as well, where this has been for years now. We see 60% of organizations who get hit with ransomware close their doors permanently within
Within
90.
6 months. Within
Yeah, or
six
within
months.
6 months.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And every year I have to go back and look that up because somebody challenges us on it. And I go, I'll go back and look it up. And I find, yeah, it's still the case. Because when you get hit, there's just a lot of consequences that are sliding along that scale.
Yep.
And look, the truth of it is it's either you're prepared or you're not. And if
Mhm.
you're not, you're on your heels and you're in a really bad place for this. So the thing is that nowadays the insurance carriers, the regulatory bodies, they know when you've been hit as well. There's certain patterns they see, and you can get a lot of trouble for trying to hide it as
Yeah.
well. So there's something to
Yeah.
think about there. Unless you had anything to add to that, John, we can go on to the next one,
Mhm.
which I believe is where we're talking about backup. And, again, we touched on some of this already, but the insurers are asking very specific questions. They want to know that there's multi-factor authentication on not only these endpoints, but in the backups as well, that they can see everything with regard to the backups and that they're documented. And what I mean by that is, have you documented the process by which you would go through recovery? Have you tested those backups to make sure that they are not infected or and can be operational?
Mhm.
And there's other things like backups have to be held offline in immutable storage, which we talked about. Typically, that's cloud storage today. In the
Mhm.
past, that used to be tape drives. Tape
Mhm.
drives had tons and tons of problems with them, not to mention the lengthy recovery time objective associated with that. And again, the testing, I can't stress that enough, having been in this industry for so long.
Mhm.
How many organizations say, yeah, yeah, we have good backups, we're good, we've been taking backups.
Mhm.
Oh, look, there's the little screen that says it was successful and it has the little green checkbox. How cute, right? Um, you don't want to find out that your backups aren't good on the day the what hits the fan.
Right.
It's just not the time to try the fire drill out. It's something that should be regularly done,
Mhm.
and your provider can help you with that. That's something that MSPs are doing very well for the clients they serve. So the other thing is having those controls in place, like phishing simulations and tests. Vulnerability scanning is a huge thing because there's always new vulnerabilities with hardware and
Mhm.
software out there. And all of these things actually improve that risk situation that insurers are looking to improve upon. I mean, that's
Ab-
that's the
ab-
name of the game here.
Absolutely. And kind of harping on that, this is a kind of public service announcement to those that are paying attention to the presentation today. Backups, offline segmentation, regularly tested. I one time recommended to a CISO, you need to do pen testing at your backup environment. And he literally rolled his eyes and went, are you kidding? And it's like it because they were so
Yeah.
tired of pen testing the network. the email systems, their applications. They were like pen testing themselves to death. I said, but do me a favor and pen test your backup environment to make sure that hackers can't get to it before you can.
That's
And
correct.
by doing that, earns you serious brownie points with the insurers.
Absolutely.
And that's why I love the part that Brian hit on the bottom here. Vulnerability scanning, improve risk ratings. Absolutely, it does. The more preemptive work you're doing on the front end and documenting that this is why we did it, actually earns you serious points on the back end with the insurance carriers as well. So Brian, thank you very much. That was
Oh, you're
excellent.
welcome, John.
No,
Yeah,
no, thank you.
absolutely.
Excellent work. So managed IT for healthcare, a force for the good. So we exist at Coeus Consulting because we come into the market to support healthcare IT services. We come into working from SMBs, mid-market companies that are in the healthcare space. We understand what it means to be HIPAA compliant. We understand the ideas of how endpoint security works and email security, and understanding what it means to have a true 24 by 7, security operations offering to our customers. We understand through our compliance advisory services that HIPAA does change throughout the year. You'll have changes. You'll have environments. You won't stay up with your training. Again, for those that do, thumbs up, thank you. For those who don't, we're pointing at you. Those that don't encrypt everything, those that are constantly bringing new systems online without keeping up to a gold standard, right? The ability to ensure that now someone's playing around with AI for the first time and doing ChatGPT for healthcare or Gemini or whatever. And the company does not have a policy. Healthcare provider says, yes, we're letting people go exploring. Do you have a policy on usage and consumption? No. Well, that's
Mhm.
why we have started to work with a partner called Hummingbird Advisory Partners to help healthcare providers develop and implement policies and procedures and controls around AI healthcare and AI. Because most people see AI as a value in healthcare, like everything else. However, without having guardrails and security and controls in place, it absolutely can undo a lot of the hard work that you've already done to protect your environment as well. So our framework, which is the Coeus Codec, is a framework that is developed by us. Linus Malford, our managing director, along with other team members for years, have been developing this framework to help customers with how we help manage and secure their environments. It is a proven kind of framework that tells us how we do our 24 by 7 knock, how we implement endpoint securities, how assessments are done, how we provide documentation, how we ensure backups are encrypted, and the ability to test backup from restoring, and making sure that we can maintain your compliant advisory status and cyber insurance advisory status throughout the entire year as well. This is something that we go with every customer. We walk in and say, here's your patch management. Here's your MFA. Here's how we're making sure security awareness training is being done. And most importantly of all, here's how we're making sure on a 24 by 7 basis that you can prove to your insurance carriers your stuff is being monitored, the controls are being put in place, and proactive security controls are being implemented thanks to your partnership with Coeus Consulting, right? End of the day, how can we help you get started? Let's talk about, we've taken all this time of your time. I hope you've enjoyed your pizza and your wings. I personally prefer the buffalo wings myself, but that's my preference. But I hope you're enjoying the food today. Where do we start? Let's start first with getting an assessment. Let's talk about getting a meeting between us and you guys and talking about how we can come in with our team and say, let's assess your environment today. Let's assess your endpoint, your backing up, your applications, your patch management. We look at your instant response capabilities today. We look at your email security capabilities. We most importantly will help you making sure that when you fill out all your assessments for HIPAA and cyber insurance, that we will come in and make sure that you're mapping correctly so you don't have an incomplete assessment being completed as well. That's our commitment to the healthcare environment in the Southwest. We love working with clients in the healthcare space. We understand it very, very well. So give us a call, 602-93-COEUS, or catch us online at coe.us/contact. We'd love to hear from you. And again, thank you again for making the time today. If there's no questions, we want to take a moment and thank you today for being on to this wonderful event. I hope you enjoyed the pizza for those that participated. And again, I want to take a big shout out to Brian. Brian, thank you from Kaseya for your support today. I want to thank you very much for making the time as well. For those of you that have a chance to make this, there'll be a rebroadcast of this on LinkedIn and YouTube on Friday. And we'll be putting out an announcement as well if you wanted to download any portion of the presentation as well. Thank you all for making the time today. I want to thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you again on any future events. Take care.